Right. Now, coming back to nutrition, as I was telling you, some simple foods are good in the case of diarrhea, where you do not want to overtax the patient's GIT, right? Because their GIT is already susceptible, that is damaged in a way. So you do not want to put it to more work, right? Now, one problem of not eating would be malnutrition, so you would want to avoid that. Now, coming to drug therapy, specifically of diarrhea, see, normally what happens is several people generally tend to jump immediately to antimicrobials, antibiotics. That should not be the case. You will understand soon why. In most of what you call diarrhea, you should what you call this thing. Antibiotics and antimicrobials are not warranted. It is not necessary. See, now if we talk about specific antimicrobials, now there is a problem with antimicrobials that some antimicrobials themselves will cause diarrhea as well. So you have to be careful of that. Most of the time, diarrhea is self-limited, as I told you. If you let it be, after a little while, it will get cured itself, right? Generally within 1 or 2 days it will resolve itself, until and unless you are having again several episodes, like more than 4 5 6 episodes in a day. Then what you call, you might need to get yourself intervene with a medical professional and go to a doctor, get some drugs and some things like that. Generally speaking, when you are giving antimicrobial, especially in diarrhea, this will alter the course of the illness. So what will happen is, even if it was a simple diarrhea, it will get complicated because there are secondary complications that will develop. For example, there is one particular bacteria called Clostridium difficile. Okay, C difficile bolte हैं उसको. Now this fella is generally present on your skin surface. Some of it is also present in your intestinal flora. But the thing is, your intestinal flora will suppress the replication of Clostridium difficile. So even if it is there in your intestine, it will not function properly. It will not show its effect completely, that particular bacteria, because other bacteria that is present in your intestine, that will be suppressing the function of C. difficile. One problem with giving unwarranted antimicrobials is, when you give antimicrobials, it will kill the bacteria in your, some of the antimicrobials can kill the bacteria in the intestinal flora. If your intestinal flora bacteria, your bacteria in your intestinal flora are dying, there is nothing to suppress your C. difficile. C. difficile in turn can cause another type of diarrhea. Okay, C. difficile itself is very virulent and in some cases MDR, multi-drug resistant. So in such cases, you have to be very careful. If you are giving antimicrobials which are not warranted, where it is not necessary, you have to be careful that the patient might develop a C. difficile infection in turn, because knowingly, intentionally or unintentionally, you will kill some of the intestinal flora, which will in turn cause C. difficile infection. Okay, I hope you guys understood that concept. If you have a doubt, please let me know. Okay. Now, when we are talking about diarrhea patients, they are broadly classified into two categories. Now, based on these two categories, giving antimicrobials will be warranted. So in one type you will give antimicrobials, the other you will not. Specifically, if there is abundant water diarrhea, the first type, okay, if there is a lot of mucus, a lot of, sometimes blood as well is coming out, very watery diarrhea, sometimes vomiting is there, but fever is not there. Okay, almost no fever is there. In such cases, what you call, you should not give any antibiotic. These are generally due to viruses or due to cholera or ETEC. In such conditions, the best therapy that you can give is ORS, because that is the main thing you're supposed to give. Very very few times antimicrobials are warranted. Like a very small percentage of cases of abundant watery diarrhea, you have to give uh, antimicrobials. Generally you should not, right? Now, on the flip side, there is another type of diarrhea which will be slightly loose and lower volume, meaning the patient will not have as many larger episodes, if you can understand, uh, and they will not be as loose. The what you call loose motions will not be as loose, but the patient will have fever. Okay, there might be a little bit of mucus, a little dehydration. In the first case, you will have proper dehydration, no fever, all of that. Okay, nausea will be there. The patient will not want to eat. They'll be vomiting. In those cases, you should not give antimicrobials. In the second case, when mild dehydration is there, vomiting is not there, there will be abdominal pain and fever. In those conditions, These symptoms generally indicate a mucosal invasion by one of these bacteria. Okay, it can be due to what do you call, yeah, Shigella. It can be due to enteropathogenic E. coli. It's a type of E. coli. Okay, or Campylobacter jejuni. This is Campi jejuni is Campylobacter. Okay, or Salmonella. Oh dear, one second. Right. Or Salmonella or Yersinia or Enterohistolytica or Clostridium difficile. See, this is the one I was talking about. In all of these cases, you have to give specific antimicrobials. Right? I hope you understand the difference between. There will be, see, to put it in a nutshell, there are two main types of diarrhea patients. One who have extremely watery diarrhea, the other who have less frequent, less loose diarrhea. Antimicrobial should be used in the second kind, the one who have less volume and less loose diarrhea. The first one, ORS is the main therapy, not antimicrobials. All right. Now, see, in all of these conditions as well, antimicrobials will be of no value. So, because in this diarrhea is because of a non-infective cause. For example, IBS, okay, infective bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel syndrome, sorry. So that is a autoimmune condition where because of that autoimmune condition you are having diarrhea, not because of infection. Or celiac disease or thyrotoxicosis. Thyrotoxicosis is basically very very high amounts of T3 T4 in your blood. Or rotavirus infection, maybe sometimes food poisoning from your salmonella, but it is self-limiting, meaning if you give it enough time it will get treated as is. And in patients who are infants or elderly or immunocompromised patients, okay, those patients specifically who have been treated with ciprofloxacin, azithromycin and ceftriaxone. Now these three drugs specifically, these are given prophylactically. If you go to a hospital, if you check any random prescription as well, yeah, someone mentioned in the chat group SS. Are you asking a doubt or Anusha? I think. Well, if you have a doubt, raise your hand, or you can talk it out, or you can even put it in the chat group if you do have a doubt, or if you want me to slow down, or if you want me to repeat any part. Now, as I was telling, in non-infective diarrhea, antimicrobial should not be given. And generally, when you see a patient, if you go to a hospital, prophylactic treatment will be given, meaning just in case something happens. Okay, just to be sure and just to make sure that what you call infections do not occur, there will be a few prophylactic uh, something like vaccine. Okay, just so that you can avoid a problem, there will be a few antimicrobials given. But the problem is because of such antimicrobials diarrhea can develop. Okay, so you have to be careful of that. So in such conditions you should not treat antimicrobials to treat. See, एक antimicrobial say you are having diarrhea, so you do not use another antimicrobial to treat that. Okay, so you have to be careful until and unless it is C difficile. C difficile को treat करना पड़ता. Now, when you can use antimicrobial is in severe diseases. So there is something called a traveler's diarrhea. Okay, generally seen in travelers. Obviously, as the name suggests, you use rifamycin. You'll understand a little bit about this more when we come across chemotherapy of antimicrobials. After this chapter, I'll do asthmatics. After asthmatics, we'll start this thing. Asthmatics, anti-cough medicines. After that, we'll start what do you call antimicrobials, because you are going through asthma and pulmonary problems right now. I'm going through asthma. Okay, after that, we'll do antimicrobials. Now, EPEC, Shigella, or non-typhoidal Salmonella, or Yersinia, in all of them, specific antibiotics have been given. See, for now, you can memorize one or two, but once you go over that chapter, you will understand this much better, why this is used in this way. Okay, so we'll skip this part for now. Probiotics, as you know, are very useful in diarrhea. Now, if you know, in patients who have diarrhea, some people do recommend eating dahi or curd. Okay, because curd is a very very abundant source of lactobacillus, right? That is a very natural probiotic. Other than that, you can give probiotics that are available in the market as well. You will find probiotics with other types of bacteria which will help in what you call flourishing your gut flora. Now, whenever a person has diarrhea, what will happen to their gut flora is it will get severely damaged. Now, I hope you know what gut flora is. It will help in absorption and digestion in your intestines, so specifically your large intestine. in diarrhea or diarrhea like conditions, they will get damaged. So in that condition, you can give external bacteria which can be helpful. So these will be probiotics. All right. These are microbial cell preparations basically. They are live, but they will not be infective. They will not cause infections, and they will not cause other problems. Mostly helpful. So there is that. The most safest one and the most what you call common one that you will see is yogurt, obviously curd or yogurt, right? Now coming to non-specific antidiarrheal drugs, this will be pure antidiarrheal drugs in the sense that, um, for example, जैसा मैं absorbents and adsorbents की बात करूँ, the first class in antidiarrheals, which is kaolin and pectin, what this fella will do is, it will act as a gum. Okay, let's suppose you have what do you call, you have a chewing gum of some sort. Okay, and you chew it and you put it somewhere without wrapping it in paper, it will stick to things around it, right? That is what chewing gum does. So in this case, what absorbents and adsorbents like kaolin will do is, if you consume that, they will go to your intestine and they will absorb bacterial toxins, and sometimes they will absorb and adsorb the bacteria itself. So in that condition, it is helping in acting as an anti-diarrheal. Okay, it will remove the particle that is causing diarrhea itself. Though it is not a proper antimicrobial, it will remove the bacteria out of the equation. Okay, at least most of them. That is how absorbents and adsorbents work. Then there is anti-secretory drugs. Now, for you to understand this, you need to know one thing. If patients who have अच्छा, आप लोगों को पेन पढ़ाए थे last year? One question that I have is, were you guys taught pain management? What is pain? What are the types
Yes,
of
sir.
pain? पेन पढ़ाए. Okay, then पेन के receptors मालूम है? What are enkephalins, dynorphins, endorphins? One person is answering something. Are you guys even online, first of all?
Yes, sir.
If you are online, who's that? Is
Yes,
that
sir, we
Rajan?
are.
Yes, sir.
Hi, राजेंद्र साहब क्लास को आए?
Sir, yes, sir.
उतना डीपली नहीं पढ़ाया था सर. अच्छा, see, how should I put it? Excellent. If you guys want to, you can switch your video on so that it will be to avoid confusion basically. Hold on, I'll switch my video on as well. But वो PDF दिखने थोड़ा लो. Yeah, switch your video on if you can. 1 second. Hello, बाजू आते. Now your pain is felt through pain receptors. Okay, you need to have something that is receiving that information. Now there will be different types of chemicals in your body that will correlate with these receptors. For now, just remember that enkephalin is an opioid receptor, meaning it will act as an analgesic. It will act as a body's natural painkiller. Okay, enkephalin, endorphins and all. Let's suppose I take one small pin and I prick myself like this. Okay, I have a little bit of pain here, right? Obviously, if I prick myself, I will have pain. So your body will naturally release some kind of painkillers in such senses. Your endorphins, enkephalins, opioid, what do you call, opioid receptor से काम करने वाले chemicals, those will be what do you call, these enkephalins, dynorphins and all. We'll go over in detail when we come across pain. You have what do you call, analgesics and all, then I'll explain in detail. But for now, you need to remember that those opioid receptor working drugs or opioid receptor working chemicals, they have one very specific side effect called constipation. For example, have you guys ever seen a patient who is on morphine? Morphine or any opioid analgesic like tramadol or codeine or morphine or something like that in hospital, obviously, or in your relations as well. uh, Maybe some grandmother or someone who you know who regularly takes an opioid analgesic basically. Okay, so in such patients you will notice that they have one very particular problem. They will have constant constipation every day, the whole day, for a long period of time, for as long as they are on the drug, they will have constipation. Okay, that is because opioid receptor whenever you stimulate opioid receptor, that will decrease the function of GIT. That is why they are having what do you call this thing, constipation. That can be helpful for us in this condition. If someone is having diarrhea, if I'm able to induce a little bit of constipation, it will come back to normal, right? Let's suppose here is what do you call diarrhea, and here is constipation. Okay, I am trying to bring diarrhea towards constipation. Even if I don't get proper constipation, I'm coming back to normalcy. Okay, that is the simplest way I can explain it to you in this sense, because you don't know what opioid receptors are for now. Yeah, anti-secretory drugs are doing the same thing. Enkephalinase receptor is something that will inhibit enkephalinase. Enkephalin, enkephalinase will inhibit enkephalin. Okay, enkephalin is that what do you call chemical that will be responsible for opioid receptor action. Okay, I'll put it in a easier way for you to understand. एक receptor है, ठीक है? If I stimulate, there is one receptor in your body called opioid receptor. If I stimulate that receptor, I will get analgesia. Okay, I will I will decrease the amount of pain in my body. Let's simply put. Now that chemical is called enkephalin. One type of one such chemical is enkephalin. It is working by enkephalin receptor, opioid receptor. Okay, easier for you to understand. Opioid receptor, enkephalin. Now in your body, after your, let's suppose in some person they are pricking, or because of some injury they are having pain. I told you these natural analgesics or natural painkillers are released in your body. At one point of time I have to stop the function of that chemical, or else the patient will go into euphoria, right? They will start acting like a drug addict, right? They will go into proper happiness and all of that, right? If you give someone morphine, what will happen? If you give a normal person happy, they will suddenly become high, and they will what do you call, you know how they will become. So basically drunk in a way. Okay, decreased amount of consciousness and decreased sensitivity, that will happen. So your body naturally would want to stop the function of enkephalin after pain is reduced. Okay, let's suppose someone is getting an injury on day one. Painkillers nahi, what you call opioid receptor or opiates, the chemicals that are decreasing pain, they are being released for 3 days, let's suppose, till that injury is healed. Okay, so for 3 days continuously that chemical is being released, so that till your injury is completely healed. Once your injury is healed, you need to stop the function of this chemical, or else the patient will go into sedation. Okay, their conscious will what you call be wavering here and there. So to stop the function of this particular enzyme, there is something called enkephalinase present in your body. Enkephalinase is an enzyme that will destroy enkephalin. Okay, simple. If you remember, elastase will break down elastin. The same way enkephalinase will break down enkephalin. All right. I hope you remember what elastase and elastin are. Okay. Now, enkephalinase ki activity, if I stop that fellow itself, there is nothing stopping enkephalin. Right? It will keep on functioning. Another side effect, or let's suppose another function of enkephalin other than decreasing pain, is decreasing the function of GIT. So whenever you have pain killing function, the what you call normal work of your GIT will decrease. So digestion and digestive processes will decrease, which is helpful in our condition here. If someone is having diarrhea, all right, meaning their GIT is working extra hard in a indirect way. So if I'm able to inhibit the function in this specific sense, if I'm able to stop peristalsis, let's suppose GIT का एक function, ठीक है? If I'm able to stop peristalsis, diarrhea will decrease. That is what rasicotril will do. Okay, that enkephalinase inhibitor will do. That is the second class. I hope you guys understood that. If you want me to explain it again, please let me know. If you still have doubts what it was. Okay. Then the third class will be anti-motility drugs. Anti-motility drugs, as the name suggests, it will directly inhibit peristalsis. So your loperamide is very common. Eldofer बोल के मिलता, right? Yeah, someone put it in chat. Understood. Okay. So loperamide and diphenoxylate, both of them will inhibit motility. So they will decrease peristalsis directly. If you are decreasing peristalsis, the movement of your bowels will stop. So basically, you are indirectly decreasing diarrhea. Okay, these are about anti-diarrheals. That will complete your constipation and anti-diarrheal drugs. I hope you guys understood. If you did not, please let me know. Any one of you didn't understand any particular part? If not, we'll start asthma. Okay, everyone understood, I guess. चलो ठीक है. Still very few people, 10 people. Okay, connection problems, huh? Right. Let's start asthmatic drugs. Now, before we understand asthma, you need to know what is asthma. Yeah, Ganesh, you have a doubt? You raised your hand. Okay, नहीं, अच्छा, it was an accident. Okay. So, asthma क्या है? Now, you know that asthma is a condition wherein the patient will cough a lot because they are not able to breathe. Why is that happening? Now, asthma is basically a allergic reversible condition. All right. This can be, there are two types of asthma. Obviously, you will understand it a little bit better in pathophysiology. You have that in a few weeks, a few days, we'll discuss that. But I'll give you a brief picture of what is happening. Now, this coughing is because of allergy. Okay, now this allergen can be external, it can be internal, anything. Mostly it is external. For example, pollen or what do you call animal danders. So animal danders are animal hairs or things like that. Those are animal danders. Or what do you call molds, bacterial or fungal molds. All of these will act as allergens and they will cause, or dust as well, right? Dust allergy is also pretty common. So these will cause a bronchospasmatic reaction in your lungs. So basically, your lung will release a lot of mucus, and there will be inflammatory reaction. It will cause congestion in your lungs. Okay, because increased amount of allergen hai, it will cause allergy. It will go inside your lung whenever you are breathing it in. It will go inside your lung. It will go to your, again, if you are having confusion once, please before your pathology class as well, go through the anatomy and physiology of your respiratory system once. It will be very, very easy to understand pulmonary system then. Okay, what are different types of bronchioles? How is the connection? What is the hierarchy? What are their individual functions, cell structure, and so on and so forth. Some briefly at least. Right now, this dust particle or this allergen is going inside your lung, and what it is doing is it is triggering an inflammatory reaction wherein a lot of leukotrienes will be formed and ultimately a lot of mucus is being secreted, ultimately causing blockage of your bronchi. There will be bronchospasm as well, but because of bronchoconstriction, specifically bronchospasms is other, bronchoconstriction hota, and there will be a lot of mucus being produced along with edema and all. You know, inflammation हुआ बता edema आना ही है, right? When all of this occurs, guess what will happen? The patient will not be able to breathe. So in this condition, if you are able to give something, we'll discuss that in the drug. So I hope you understand what is asthma. Asthma is basically a condition in which, because of blockage of your respiratory bronchioles or terminal bronchioles or your air passageway in general, all around your lung, okay, not just the distal part, the peripheral part, the whole respiratory tract, anywhere if there is an allergen coming, there is excessive amount of mucus production, inflammatory reaction causing congestion. Okay? Because of congestion, the patient is not able to breathe. That is the most basic way of telling asthma. I hope you understand that before we get into what are anti-asthmatics. Right. Now, see, asthma is a disease associated with inflammation of airway wall, right? It is because of hyperresponsiveness of your tracheobronchial smooth muscle, right? It can lead to bronchospasm, it will lead to mucosal edema, there will be mucus plugging. Now, along with mucus, because there is inflammation, sometimes pus will also come into picture. So, all of this will, what do you call, block your air passageway. Now, this is a reversible disease, mind you. So, that basically means that if you are able to take a bronchodilator or an asthmatic drug before it is progressing too much. So, if you have someone, I'm not sure whether you have seen an asthmatic in person or not, but generally, if you have someone who has asthma, they keep carrying around a inhaler with them. They have to, all right, because any condition, see, sometimes it can be emotional as well. It is not just allergens are not the only way asthma can be triggered. Sometimes extreme stress, emotion, all of that can trigger an asthmatic reaction as well. So in such conditions, and sometimes physical exercise as well, any physical exertion, they're exerting themselves too much, then that can also lead to that asthma, asthmatic attack. In that condition, you will have an inhaler at hand hopefully, and if you are able to inhale the drugs in that. Now how you inhale is, I hope आप लोगों को inhalation कैसा करना सिखाए, या asthmatic patient को कैसा inhalation कराना सिखाए. Nahi. Okay. For example, there is some ex person who is an asthmatic, and they are getting. You are giving them a inhaler for the first time, and you are telling them how to inhale. So the instructions will be, the first thing that they have to do is breathe out. Okay. Breathe complete the whatever air is there inside their lungs completely out. What you call, use the inhaler and breathe in slowly over a what you call period of 5 to 10 seconds, and while they are inhaling they have to push the button of the inhaler so that the drug goes inside and stays there for at least 10 seconds or something like that. Okay, around 10 seconds. You have to wait at least that much amount of time for the drug to go inside and settle in, and you have to wait before you continue breathing. Okay, that is how you uh, instruct a asthmatic. So what you do is you tell them to breathe out first, then slowly breathe in while putting the inhaler obviously in their mouth, and gently pressing the button in. While doing that, after they have pressed in as well, they do that for almost 10 seconds before taking the other breath, so that the drug has enough time to go settle inside your lungs and start showing its function. Generally, one or two puffs are more than enough. Okay, I hope you understood that. Now, clinical characteristics of asthma will be recurrent bouts of coughing. So they will cough a lot because they are not getting enough of, because their airways are blocked. They will have shortness of breath. They will have chest tightness and wheezing. Okay, you can check a video of wheezing, how it looks like, or if you already know, then it is fine. They will not be able to breathe properly. So they will start wheezing. They will literally put a lot of effort in breathing. That is when wheezing will occur, right? There will be, pathologically speaking, there will be inflammation. So basically your in lymphocytes, your WBCs, your eosinophils, all of them will come. Your mucosa will be generated, deposition of collagen occurs, your whole inflammatory reaction occurs properly. That is what is happening in asthma. All right. Now, as I told you, there are subtypes of asthma. You will have allergic kind, non-allergic kind, extrinsic and intrinsic kind. Now, allergic is pretty common, as I told you, animal danders or pollen or bacterial molds, all of them. Non-allergic will be your, what do you call, emotional type and all of that. Okay? Emotion, stress, or excitation, things like that. Extrinsic asthma, this is the more common one, wherein it is episodic, okay, and less prone for status asthmaticus. Status asthmaticus is a dangerous condition wherein even if you are inhaling whatever the drug you have, अगर inhaler का drug भी inhale कर रहे, asthma is not getting cured. Okay, they are still having what do you call, a lot of cough, and the situation is not dissipating. It is still exacerbating. They're not able to breathe. The attack is continuing even after taking the drug in the inhaler. Okay, that is status asthmaticus. Okay, that's an emergency condition. Extrinsic asthma is more episodic. It will not go to that degree. Intrinsic asthma is the more dangerous kind, wherein, see, extrinsic asthma generally develops earlier in age. So either as a child or as a young adult, by then you will have the you will, what do you call, come across the allergen, and you will definitely what do you call, have or will be diagnosed with asthma. Intrinsic asthma takes time. Generally, it will take longer to diagnose. Adults and all, they will get diagnosed with asthma, and it's a more what do you call, serious condition, and it will be perennial in the sense that it will be very seasonal. Okay, in one particular season it will happen, and it will be very severe in that condition. And status asthmaticus is common in such patients. So even if you are giving certain drugs, it will not work. Okay. See, some of the triggering factors are mentioned here. Some infections can cause, irritants can cause, pollutions can cause, exercise, or cold air. So cold air also, sometimes if you know a asthmatic patient, you will know that in case of winter or in colder environments, they will tend to have more frequent attacks, right? So exposure to cold air, that will irritate your mucosa and irritate your respiratory canals basically. And also psychogenic. Psychogenic will be stress related or any psychological factor that is causing them to have an increased or heightened emotional state. Okay. we'll discuss about COPD. COPD we are actually discussing. COPD can also be associated with asthma in a way. Okay? Sometimes they go hand in hand. Patients will have sometimes asthma and COPD both. Okay? I hope you understood what is asthma, at least the brief picture of asthma. Tomorrow anyway we'll start pathology again. Today is, what is today? Tuesday or Wednesday? Wednesday. So Thursday,
Wednesday.
Friday, Saturday. Okay, then tomorrow we'll start pathology, right? So we did till, what did we do till? COPD, I did bronchitis. We were doing emphysema, right? I think emphysema is done, if I remember correctly. We have to continue with asthma. So tomorrow we'll discuss more about pathophysiology of asthma itself. Did you understand what happened in this class, all of you? If you did not, please let me know. See, you guys will have to talk, or else I will not be able to know. Because at least अपन लोग क्लास में थे जब तुम लोग के सूरता देख के मैं रिपीट करता था, किसी को समझ में आया नहीं आया, based on your expressions. Now all I see is a blank screen, so I cannot exactly tell. You guys have to speak out. Okay, either put it in the chat group or speak out if you're not understanding anything. All right.
Papa.
Yeah, Atul. Who was that with a baby in their hand, I guess? Or was that one of you who actually made a baby sound? Well, in any case, chalo. Yeah, Atul, do you have a doubt? You raised your hand.
No, sir. No, sir.
अच्छा गलती से. Okay, never mind. चलो ठीक है. We'll continue in the next class then. Okay, we have some 4 minutes left anyway. We'll continue in the next class.
Yes.
See you guys tomorrow then.